Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's installment of the OpenText Live webinar series. My name is Sarah Lang, and I'll be moderating today's call. With me is Martin Tees and Dennis Norgord from the OpenText portfolio team, and they're here to talk to you about OpenText Gupta SQLBase 12.1. If you have a question for Martin or Dennis at any time during today's call, simply type it into the Q&A box, which is at the right-hand side of your screen. I'll ask your questions at the end of the call and allow the presenters to answer. If we are unable to get to your questions today, we will send the presenters all the questions asked, and they will be able to follow up with you directly after the call. Finally, today's session is being recorded. You'll be able to find the PowerPoint and the recording later this afternoon on the Knowledge Center, and we'll also send you an email with these materials within the next couple of days. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Martin, and we can get started.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So OpenText Gupta SQLBase 12.1 is going to be launched very soon. Actually, you will be able to get the software by tomorrow through the Knowledge Center. And this brand new release has a kind of tagline of enhanced automation and modern tools. And there are a few more things in this release that we are going to tell and show you now. So the main themes are maintenance automation, so things that SQLBase has always been great in, reducing the maintenance that is required to enable SQLBase to run at customer sites or at user sites, and that makes the total cost of ownership of SQLBase so low that many ISVs like to deploy SQLBase even in masses, in thousands or 10,000 copies to their user base. Modern tools, we have added a new tool to SQLBase, SQLTalk Plus. We're going to talk about this and also show you this. And automated upgrading means that your existing SQLBase deployments that don't have SQLBase version 12 yet can be easily upgraded to SQLBase 12.1, for example, to get the benefits of SQLBase 12 and 12.1. So let's look a bit more in detail on what's there in volume backups, for example. So we have enhanced backup automation for volume backups when they are in use. So there are basically two scenarios where one scenario is where you're using virtual machines and you run SQLBase in a volume in a virtual machine. And then you basically want to take a backup of that volume without having SQLBase to create that online backup, because that online backup might use a lot of disk space and take a lot of time. So if you just can back up the volume of the virtual machine in operations, that would be nice. And that's exactly what SQLBase 12.1 does for you using the Microsoft VSS system. And the other part is that some or many software, backup softwares do have VSS included in their backup software, so that you can use backup software to backup in-use volumes that have active SQLBase databases. So that has been requested many times by customers and enhances the automation or the efficiency that IT departments can leverage to maintain SQLBase. So during this backup, there's no SQLBase service interruption for high availability systems. So one quite interesting thing here in SQLBase 12.1, VSS gaps that allow online volume backups. The other thing that is very new, SQLTalk.net. Actually, they have an error on the slide. It's called SQLTalk Plus. So what this does is you get a new color-coded SQL editor that allows for easier reading and SQL construction, providing higher productivity, so developers and database administrators can easily accomplish their tasks when they have to type SQL and test their database statements or database structure and things like that. And then SQLTalk Plus is based on the .NET, so it can use the .NET data providers to connect to any data source. It works with SQLBase. It can also work with Microsoft SQL, the Oracle database, and any other data source that uses that provides an NDP. And when in the connection dialog, you will see that later in our demo, you can basically provide a connection string and even edit the connection string, so test different settings for production and staging databases, so you can find your right database connection string and have a testing tool for that. SQLTalk Plus also comes with data output in grid format, so you can see the data in grid format, but also do sorting and grouping, but also do data maintenance like inserting new rows, updating existing data, and delete rows if you like. And that has a visual interface for that. So a nice new handy tool that allows you to connect to many databases, giving you access to SQL functionality in a nice visual way. Automatic database upgrades. If you or your customers are using lots of pre-SQLBase 12 databases, then they are probably desperately looking for the performance increases that come with SQLBase 12.0 or even some of the new features of SQLBase 12.1. And what we did with SQLBase 12.1 is we have automated upgrading of existing older version SQLBase databases. So once you install SQLBase 12.1 on, let's say, a SQLBase non-database, it will automatically open, when the first connect happens, it will automatically detect the old version, convert it to the new 12.1 version, and then go into operation on that new version. So that means big benefits for ISVs that don't want to touch the customer's installation, do a manual unload of data and do manual maintenance tasks. It's all automated now in SQLBase 12.1. The benefits of SQLBase 12.0, just to recapitulate the most important things that were in SQLBase 12.0, that can now be easily deployed to your application users. With SQLBase 12.0, you have much enhanced multi-user performance through native operating system threading and much enhanced scalability. And many customers have seen huge increases, and the more processor cores they add, the more increases they see. So that's a nice feature in SQLBase 12.0, and that many really like. You have 64-bit and 32-bit database servers, and you can choose between any bitness that your customer has installed or requires. And also the applications can be 32-bit or 64-bit. And in 12.0, you had that easy EDP configuration and install builder for zero-hassle mass deployment, which of course is still there. It can now deploy SQLBase 12.1 with that automatic database migration tool. So in SQLBase 12.1, there are several other things as well. There are SQL enhancements like this one here. A new limit clause limits the number of returned rows from a query. So you can say, let's say you have a query that would return, I don't know, 1,000, 100,000 rows or whatever. You can put at the end of the statement, you could put the limit clause, say limit to 10, so you just return the 10 rows that should be visible to the user. That can reduce network traffic and processing speed, of course. The other new SQL enhancement is a new format function, the add format function, which basically creates a formatted string from a number value. And this is nice for creating currency formats, percent values, and more. And this is, of course, again, very useful if you are familiar with TV Mobile, for example, or in general HTML applications, where everything is basically displayed in strings, and you need to provide those strings. So this new function can format a string in the way you want to display it on the screen, and that is quite nice if that comes directly from the database, and you don't need to massage the data in the development system, and you just get it perfectly formatted for output from the database. And Dennis will show you that, and then you will probably understand more of what that format that you see in that screenshot there is in detail. So there are a few driver enhancements as well. The .NET data provider has enhanced API support, supports more API functionality that you can use when writing .NET applications. And the Visual Studio integration driver, DDEX, is updated to support Visual Studio 2017. So you can use the latest Microsoft Development Studio in conjunction with SQLBase. So you can, from within Visual Studio, you can use the server manager to connect to databases. You can create SQL statements there. And you can also create ADO data sets that you can then use in your C# programming, for example. SQLBase 12.1 supports Windows 10 and Windows Server 2016. So you can deploy and use SQLBase on the latest Windows operating systems, which has been requested as well now. And we have two optional add-ons to SQLBase that really make a lot of sense. These are OpenText products that enhance the features of SQLBase, basically. OpenText Integration Center offers data synchronization, and basically is a data integration and synchronization tool between multiple data sources. So you can use this to synchronize data between multiple SQLBase databases, if you like. But you can also synchronize between SQLBase and other databases, like, of course, SQL Server, Oracle, and other databases. And OpenText Integration Center also supports unstructured data formats. So if you have document management systems, you can attach to those and pull out PDFs and move those around as well. But this one is really nice because you can also transform data during synchronization. So there's a little kind of macro language in Integration Center that you can use to create aggregate data during synchronization, for example. Or you can create your own formulas or your own macros for the data transformation. So you can create, you can do data type conversions and things like that. So pretty complex things, actually which are quite nice for large data networks, I would call them. So we have here multiple database servers that in some kind need to be synchronized, and there can be added a lot of intelligence to that synchronization process. OpenText Business Intelligence is a comprehensive query reporting solution for business users. It has a visual semantic layer which allows for easy query and report building. Sounds a bit familiar like Report Builder, but this one here is really a bit more high level. This one allows you to access multiple data sources at the same time from multiple vendors. So you can basically create a report that accesses Oracle data and SQLBase data at the same time. And then you get a visual view of the report, so how it would print. And in that view, you can actually then go in and kind of design the report, drop fields that you don't want to see, add formatting that you want to use, things like that. And it's also got a good bunch of team features. It allows powerful report sharing options, including access rights and web deployment. So if you're looking for something where you deploy your reports to a larger group in your team, then this is quite interesting solution. So, and with that, I'd really like to hand over to Dennis to give a more detailed presentation of some of the features. So, Dennis, I made you the presenter.
Thank you, Martin. My name is Dennis Norgård. I'm the technical lead for Gupta SQLBase, and I'm just going to go over some of the same material, but slightly differently and a few things in more detail. So I'm going to go over the supported platforms in a little bit more detail, give you an idea of what kind of issues were resolved in this release and the new features that are part of SQLBase 12.1. So we support Windows and Linux. In SQLBase 12.1, we upgraded to Visual Studio 2017, and we use the modern settings. So now we support Windows 7 Service Pack 1 and above, and the servers, we support Windows Server 2008 R2 and above. So no longer support Windows XP or Vista or Windows 7 without the Service Pack. Part of this is to take advantage of the security updates that continually blow our way, and also the new libraries that we link with that are open source. We want to make sure they are all up to date and built with the same version of the compiler that we're using. We have 32-bit and 64-bit versions of the product, and you can interchange between 32-bit and 64-bit clients against a 32-bit and 64-bit server. We do recommend that you choose either 32-bit or a 64-bit server to host your database files and not switch between them often. When you do switch between them, the server has to do a database conversion at the time you make the switch. So you can go back and forth, but we recommend you pick a bitness and stick with it. On Linux, we support Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6 and 7. We built SQLBase on 6.9 and on 7.3. So we use the libraries that were up to date at that time. We removed our open source libraries from the SQLBase distribution on Linux and rely on what you've installed on your Linux platform, for example, OpenSSL. This means that you can keep your system up to date independently of SQLBase. When you install SQLBase on your Red Hat, you will have to make sure your library dependencies are up to date with the Red Hat version you're on. The RPMs will automatically try to bring in the dependencies, but if you're running an older version, you may have to do some updates yourself. We do have distributions for 32-bit and 64-bit on Red Hat 6, but on Red Hat 7, we decided to do 64-bit only. In the release notes, we document a lot of issues that have been resolved. But if I were to categorize them, I would say that there's three main areas that we focused on. The first one was we don't like corrupt databases or corrupt indexes, so we put some extra time into focusing on that area to make the product more reliable. We built some internal diagnostics that take advantage of some of the memory protection features of Windows, and we ran our internal diagnostics against our regression tests to find any types of multi-threading issues or pointers that were stale, any type of bug. And we did stress testing. So we listen to our customers, and when they have a problem, we really focus on that area of the product that's given the problem, and we try to get to the root cause and fix it. So we put some time into that. We also have customers who've upgraded from very old versions, and when they upgraded, they had an execution problem or a performance issue with one of their favorite queries. So we addressed some of those as well. And our .NET data provider is a big part of our path forward. We put a lot of effort into using it, supporting it, making it perform better, responding to customer issues to make fixes. So now I'll go over some of the new features, and I'll demonstrate just a couple of them. SQLTalk Plus is our interactive SQLTalk, the new version of it. We still have our existing tools in place. They're good for production, and SQLTalk Plus gives a new way to experiment and go forward. Martin will go over that in more detail. We've added support for the volume shadow copy service so that IT administrators or users can back up systems instead of just SQLBase. We have an @sign format function. We've added a limit clause. A lot of applications in the past used programmatic ways of limiting the number of rows that they fetched. But many of today's applications need to limit the result set right in the query. So we added that. We've been enhancing security incrementally, a little each time. So an example is we encrypted the server connection password in the SQL configuration file. We've improved our .NET provider by making some API additions, and we will continue to do that. Our data extensibility for Visual Studio now supports Visual Studio 2017. We've dropped support for Visual Studio 2010. So it supports Visual Studio 2012 to 2017. And now we have a way to do automatic database conversion. Okay, so let's talk about the volume shadow copy service. Microsoft service, it's also called DSS, and it allows the system to be backed up while SQLBase is running. And if you restore a backed up system, when the SQLBase portion of it is restored, it will include all committed data from the time of the backup. A few caveats. If you are running a 64-bit Windows, you should be running a 64-bit SQLBase server. Same with 32-bit. If you're running 32-bit Windows, you need to run the 32-bit SQLBase server. And the SQLBase server has to be running with elevated privileges. Now, this can mean that it's installed as a system service, and those are elevated privileges, or you can run as an administrator from your command console. If you don't do that, it's not able to hook into the DSS hooks. So I'm going to give a short demonstration of this. So I have a SQLBase server up, and it was launched from this administrator command prompt. And I have SQLTalk Plus up, but I'm going to just connect to the database because if there's I don't know what happened there. Okay, so I'm connected to Island, connect to demo. So I have a couple of database files in use. And Microsoft Windows provides some utilities. For example, DSS admin, and it's an administrative command line tool. So if I run DSS admin list writers, I'll put it into a file so we can look at it. You'll see that when I did that, the SQLBase server noticed that this operation was being performed, and if I bring up the writers, this is from the BSS admin tool, and these are all the registered writers for, let's see, here we go right here, SQLBase test. SQLBase is our server, test is a server name, and we are a BSS writer ready to participate in the volume shadow copy service. Now we can run another command, shadow. I want to say, this is like a simulation. I'm doing a backup of the C drive, and this simulates doing a shadow copy where a backup would occur, and then releasing it. So on the server, we start this operation. The server has been identified as participating, and the server prepares a snapshot. It's told to freeze its I/O operations and then thaw when it's complete. And at this stage, the backup would have been accomplished. So during that operation, SQLTalk is still live. It still can be used. I can't prolong the operation, but I still have my connection active. Oops. So the backup was done transparently to the SQLBase server as far as the user goes, and the client's using SQLBase. So that's kind of simple, but you can see that it's working. If you don't see these VSS messages on there, it's very possible that you're not running as administrator or you have no connections to the database. So that's the volume shadow copy service. The @sign format is a way to format strings, and you're able to replace the decimal point or the triad symbol or set the currency symbol. So it gives you a little more formatting capability than the old version of SQLBase. And that's all noted in the release notes and the documentation. We have an encrypted server connection password. Now this is sort of a small thing, but it's symbolic of the incremental changes we're making to SQLBase to be more security-minded. The SQL.ini configuration file for the server is usually out of view from the end users, but sometimes you have to copy it around and it can get exposed. So, so an example, this is just an example of one of the things we're doing. So in the old SQLini, you have password equals secret. And now you can go to the GUI interface of the server and set the password. And then if you look at your SQLini file again, it will be converted to encrypted password and then a magic string. You can always edit the file and put it back in clear text. So this is an example of something that we're doing to improve security. Another type of thing that we've been doing is removing clear text passwords from memory when they're not in use. SQLBase now has the ability to do automatic database conversion. We can convert databases from version 8.5 to 12.1. Most of the time when we have updates to SQLBase from version to version, we can automatically perform the conversions in memory very quickly. But there was a big change between SQLBase 11.5 and 11.6 that required us to unload the data and load the data. We changed too many internal data structures where we could not automatically convert. So that has been a sticking point for some customers who have a lot of databases on older versions. From 11.6 to present, we've gone back to, we can dynamically convert internal structures that have changed without any external conversion. So with this automatic database conversion, any version can be brought forward to 12.1. So if I go back to my screen here, I can just quickly do a demonstration of this. I have one database in here, SQLBase 8.5 DB. It's just a copy of the island database, but it's from 8.5. And if I try to connect to it, right now I have automatic database conversion turned off. If I try to connect to it, you'll see that we have an error, invalid version. So I'm going to disconnect from the database server. I'm going to edit the SQLini file. And we come down here to the automatic conversion, and it's off by default. I'm going to turn it on, and we're going to repeat that operation. We bring up the server, and again, these databases show up. I will connect to SQLBase 8.5 DB, and I'm connected, so I can select from it. So when I go back to the server log here, this is where we detected the version was old, and the server automatically unloaded the data and loaded it into a current version, and the conversion completed, and then the connection proceeded. So one additional thing I'd like to say about that is, if you discover your auto conversion needs are not addressed, to please reach out to support. There's things it can do that we haven't published, and then if there's things that we need to do that we don't, we can look into that. So just in summary, we support new versions of Microsoft Windows and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We've made many fixes and improvements and added new features. And I encourage you to refer to the release notes for more information. And that's it for me. Thank you. I'm turning you back over to Martin.
Thank you, Dennis. So let me switch. So I have installed SQLTalk Plus on a virtual machine. And the first thing I'd like to show you is the Connect dialog. If you open that, then you get a list of connections. This actually pulls a list from the installed .NET data providers on your machine, plus the configurations that are saved in the SQLTalk Plus configuration file. So you can add your custom connections in there that you can just choose from that drop-down then here. So in this case, I'd like to connect to a Gupta SQLBase 12.0 server. So now this the screen of that machine that you see is hosted in Waterloo, Canada, and I'm going to connect into a database server that's in Austin, Texas. And you can see that the connection details are here in that connection string, which, you know, the passwords and IP addresses and everything, or server names. And if it's configured right, then I just have to press connect to build the connections, and you see the system has connected using the SQLBase 12.1 .NET data provider. So here you have that new ribbon interface where you can choose what to view. You can switch on the grid results. You have an errors pane there. You can have a list view of errors if you like, so it's easier for you to follow if there are problems when loading data, for example. And you can work on data. So for the moment, let me open a quick script and just run the script here. And now I have, in view, I have set grid results to on, and I just execute this. And it's reading the data. And you see below here this status bar says it's active. So it takes a while because it's really pulling the data through half of North America, really, a few thousand kilometers. And here are the results. Now, in that new SQLTalk Plus, you can go ahead into a cell and type something in there, change it, and then go to the data ribbon and say apply changes, and it saves it to the database. So you have a nice data edit or data maintenance tool at hand that works with multiple databases. And you see here the color-coded SQL that is in the input window. Let me change to the other one now here. Let's connect to a different database here, to a SQL Server 2014. And you see again the connection string is defined here, the internal URL for that, or the internal machine name, and so on. I don't want to show you the password now. And connect. Now this connects to the SQL Server on that machine, and I can go ahead and work with SQL Server. And let me open a script for SQL Server, and you see that the color-coded SQL here again. By the way, you can also configure SQLTalk Plus. You can configure the input fonts, output fonts, and it will remember all your settings, so you can adapt that to what visual layout you like. So in SQLTalk Plus, let's execute that query here, and which is basically give me the system tables of that SQL Server, and you see it pulls the data into the script. And if I change to the output, then you see the output that you would see in the old SQLTalk, really. And in grid results, you see the data. So these queries here, I can execute all of them. Basically do the exact same thing. They show the SQL Server system tables, just in different SQL statements. And there's another table here, test data, that I can pull here. But let's do something more here. Now let's create that table here. Create the table, and you can always go to the output tab and see the table has been created. And then insert that data. Insert 2 rows of data. And then you can select from that data. So a nice SQL testing and data maintenance tool that's intuitive to use, and it's kind of the next step after SQLTalk, allowing you to connect to multiple databases from different vendors or open source databases if you like. And with that, we are really at the end of our presentation, and let's have a look at the available questions now.